مسعود رضي الله عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح مناكبنا في الصلاة ويقول استووا ولا تختلفوا فتختلف قلوبكم ليلني منكم أولو الأحلام والنهى ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. رواه Muslim. And from Abu Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, who said, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to touch our shoulders before the prayer, and he would say, be straight and do not differ, for then your hearts will differ. Let those who are people who are mature and have intelligence be near me, then those who follow on from them, then those who follow on from them. Reported by Muslim. As for, very briefly, with regard to companion of the hadith here, Abu Mas'ud, well known by his kunya Abu Mas'ud, then he was Abu Mas'ud al-Badri. We had his biography under hadith a long time ago again, under hadith number 654. And we had that his name was Uqbah ibn Amr, from the Ansar, from the tribe of Khazraj, and that he died after the year 40. And he died after the year 40, radiallahu anhu. As for who reports this hadith, then just as Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, said, it's indeed reported by Muslim in the Book of the Prayer, hadith 432, and reported by Abu Dawood in the Book of the Prayer, hadith 674, and Nasa'i in the Book of Leading the Prayer, Al-Imama, hadith 807, and by Ibn Majah in the Book of Mosques and the Congregational Prayer, chapter 45, who it is recommended should be close to the Imam. Also reported by Imam Ahmad, Ibn Khuzaymah, Abu Awana, and Abu Awana gives a chapter heading to this hadith, which we just mentioned. He mentioned the obligation of the people of intelligence and wisdom moving forward, or being put forward, then those who are next to them, and then so on. And the danger of falling back from the Imam, and the obligation of drawing close to him as far as possible, and that the Imam should say to those behind him, Istawu, be straight. The hadith also reported by Darimi, Al-Bayhaqi, Ibn Abi Shaybah, Abdul Razzaq, and Ibn Hibban. As for some of the phrases to explain in the hadith, as for the phrase that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam kana yamsahu manakibana, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to literally, he would touch our shoulders. Then the explainer of Mishkat, Mullah Ali al-Qari, he said, meaning he would place his hand upon our sides, so that we would not be in front and not be behind. I mean, from the row. We wouldn't be in front too much, slightly in front of the row. We won't be slightly behind the row. I mean, he would straighten us with his hand. As for the phrase fi salat, he would do it literally in the prayer. Then again, Mullah Ali al-Qari said, meaning in the condition when we wanted to pray the congregational prayer. It was not literally actually inside the prayer. When we wanted to pray the congregational prayer. As for the phrase that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say to them, Istawu, be straight. Then again, Mullah Ali al-Qari said, Ay dhahiran wa batinan, meaning outwardly and inwardly. Be straight outwardly and inwardly. Something that was very overlooked. The outward straightening is understood from that phrase. We mentioned the point, but inwardly as well. It's a command to be straight outwardly and inwardly. And as for the phrase وَلَا تَخْتَلِفُوا, and do not differ, again Ali al-Qari said, meaning with your bodies, فَتَخْتَلِفَ قُلُوبُكُمْ, for if you do, then your hearts will differ. Shaykh al-Albani said in his notes to Riyadh al-Salihin, regard to this phrase, for then your hearts will differ, he said, meaning your desires and wishes, they will vary. Meaning, he said, your desires and wishes, that's what will vary. And then fitan, trials and tribulations will arise. And the unity will diverge. Unity of the Muslims will diverge in that case. And the strength of Islam and the Muslims will pass away. And this contains a fine indication that differing outwardly is a cause for differing inwardly. As for the phrase Ulul Ahlami wa Nuha, that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded, let those be close to me who are Ulul Ahlam wa Nuha. Then An-Nawawi said with regard to this phrase, the first part, Ulul Ahlam, means the uqala, the people of intellect, people of good intellect. Or it is said al-balighun, it means the adults, the mature people. So they differ about this first phrase, Ulul Ahlam. Some say it means the people of intellect, some say it means the adults. And as for An-Nuha, then that means the people of intellect, people of, of sound intellect. So upon the first explanation, the two phrases have the same meaning. So they are said for emphasis. It means people of sound intellect, people of intellect. And on the second explanation, then the meaning is people who are adult, people who are mature, people of sound intellect. As for Shaykh al-Albani, then he explained the phrase in his notes to Riyadh al-Salihin to say, meaning al-balighun, adults, people of intellect, those who have complete virtue. Then as for the phrase ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ, then those who are next after them, those who follow them. And Nawawi said, meaning those who are close to them in this characteristic, I mean they should be next, and so on. As for the points of benefit to be taken from the hadith, then amongst them are the following 6 points of benefit. Firstly, and these first 2 points here, it's actually one long point broken into two, and it's quite long because of the importance of this, and it's something that we need to sort ourselves out on in this masjid, for example. So the first point, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he said in his explanation of Muslim, this hadith shows giving precedence to the person who has the most excellence, then the next in excellence, in closeness to the Imam. Because this person has the right that he should be shown honor. And also because of the fact that the Imam may need someone to take over from him. So that person will then be the one who has the most right. I mean, the one who's just behind him, he will have the most right to be the one to take over. And because that person will have sufficient awareness to alert the Imam for forgetfulness, sahu, in such a way that others will not be alert to. And that person will be able to carefully observe the form of the prayer and preserve it and convey it and to teach it to the people. And then their actions can be followed by those who are behind. As for the second point of benefit, that's actually a continuation of what An-Nawawi said there, but I'll quote it just to break it there. An-Nawawi said, rahimahullah, continuing, and this putting them forward is not particular to the prayer. Rather, the sunnah is to give precedence to the people of virtue in every gathering, that they be brought close to the Imam and to the major one in the gathering, such as the gatherings of knowledge and judgment and remembrance and consultation and the places of fighting and leadership in the prayer and teaching and giving verdicts and listening to hadith and the like of that. So the people in that regard should be in accordance with their levels in knowledge, religion, intellect, and honor, and in accordance with their age and their suitability in that matter. And the authentic ahadith are many and support each other in that regard. And he was preceded in this likewise by Al-Qadi Iyad. He made the same point, that the major people, the majors, the elders, the people of virtue, they should always be put forward and given precedence. Obviously, sometimes we have a different idea, but that's Islamically, that's what should be done. Precedence given to the elder, given to those who have virtue, that should be given. As for the third point of benefit, then again, Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, he said, it shows straightening the rows, and that the Imam should give attention to it, and should encourage upon it. The fourth point of benefit is something which At-Tibi said in his explanation of Mishkat. It shows, this hadith shows, that the heart follows the limbs. And if they differ, then it will differ. I mean, people's limbs differ, the Muslims differ in their outward, in their body parts. It will differ, the heart will differ. And if it differs, it will become corrupted. And if it becomes corrupted, then the body parts will become corrupted as well, because it is the chief of them. You know, again, stressing the point that Shaykh Al-Albani made, there's a very strong connection, and it's something which Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah brought out in his book Iqtida As-Sirat al-Mustaqim. There's a very strong connection between the heart, the inward, what's inside, and between the outward, between the limbs. That the heart affects the limbs, and likewise the limbs affect the heart. There's a two-way effect in the body there that we need to be aware of. As for the fifth point of benefit, then again At-Tibi said in his explanation of Mishkat, as for the saying of Abu Mas'ud, the companion, this is something which we didn't mention, we didn't draw attention to. I'll draw attention to it now. Inshallah, I'll find the narration. That in the report of Muslim, at the end of the narration, the narrator of the hadith, the companion Abu Mas'ud, after he reported the hadith, let those who are people of maturity and intelligence be near me, then those who follow on from them, then those who follow on from them. So after Abu Mas'ud, the companion, had narrated the hadith, then he himself said, when he narrated it, and you people today are very severe in differing. If you remember, he died from his biography, he died sometime after year 40, after some of the fighting had occurred between the Muslims. He said, as for you people today, then you are very severe in differing. So on that point, then At-Tibi said in Mishkat, in his explanation of Mishkat, as for the saying of Abu Mas'ud, then you people today are severe in differing. He was addressing the people who were taking part in the fitan, the trials and tribulations. And he intended that the reason for this differing and these trials and tribulations is not straightening the rows in the prayer. As for the sixth point of benefit and last point of benefit, then Shaykh Mahmud As-Subki mentioned in his explanation of Abu Dawud, Al-Manhal Al-Adhab Al-Mawrud, said that this hadith shows direction for the person who falls short. I mean, the one who falls short of being from those who should be directly behind the Imam. If a person falls short of that, he said, contains direction for the person who falls short. His condition is such that he falls short from this level, that he should not crowd those people out who deserve it from the place which is next to the Imam. As for the explanation, very quickly, of Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, then he said, with regard to these ahadith, he said, these ahadith explain the excellence of the rows. They are brought by Al-Hafidh An-Nawawi, rahimahullah. From them is the hadith of Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the best of the rows of the men is the first of them, and the worst of them is the last of them, and the best of the rows of the women is the last of them, and the worst of them is the first of them. The Shaykh said, that is because the rows of the women are behind the men. And this is the sunnah. So if the first of them is close to the men, then it will be the worst one. And the last of them will be far from the men, so therefore it will be the best of them. But as for the men, then the farther forward they are, then it is better. Just as the Prophet ﷺ said, warning against falling back. A people will not cease falling back until Allah puts them back. The Shaykh said this is dangerous. That the more a person stays back from the first row or the second row and ends up in the third row, or he stays back from the third row and ends up in the fourth row, then Allah may cast into his heart love of falling back with regard to righteous deeds, and Allah's refuge is sought. And therefore he said, a people will not cease falling back until Allah puts them back. The Shaykh said, so you, O my brother, go forward, move forward to the first row, and then the next one. And his saying in the Hadith, the best of the rows of the women are the last of them, and the worst of them is the first of them. The Shaykh said, unless the women are in a place which is specific to them. For in that case, then the best of their rows will be the first one, because it will be closest to the Imam, and then there will be nothing to be avoided in it. Because they are far away from the men, so there is nothing to be avoided in that regard. Then he mentioned in the next hadith that the Prophet ﷺ used to straighten our shoulders. He used to straighten the shoulders of his companions when he straightened the rows, meaning their shoulders. He would put their shoulders straight, and he would say, be straight and do not differ, so that your hearts do not differ. Meaning that the people differing with each other, some of them moving forward, some of them falling back, this will bring about the hearts differing. And at the end of the last of the hadith, meaning these hadith here, is that the Messenger ﷺ commanded the straightening of the row and said, straightening of the row is from the completion of the prayer. And that is the case. And in one narration, and this is the hadith that follows inshaAllah, the straightening of the rows is from the establishment of the prayer. So what is befitting is that we should correctly establish our rows, making them straight, and complete the first one, and then the next one. And we should be close together in the row. That is from the completion of our prayer. Then the Shaykh made a point of note. He said, a point of note, I would love to draw attention to a characteristic which the people have begun to do, and which was not known before. And it is that a person, when he has given the salam from the prayer, he moves forward in front of his brothers and turns his back to them. It's something that happens sometimes in the prayer, but the prayer is finished, so sometimes people move forward and they sit, and they then sit with their back towards the brothers. The Shaykh said, this is something which I fear enters under the prohibition, where the Messenger ﷺ said, وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا, and do not turn your backs on each other. And the hadith that the Shaykh is referring to here is the hadith reported by Al-Bukhari as hadith 6066, and Muslim as hadith 2563, as the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu an, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالظَّنِّ فَإِنَّ الظَّنَّ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيثِ. Beware of suspicion, for suspicion is the falsest, the most lying of speech. Then the Prophet ﷺ forbade a list of things, forbade spying, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, don't spy on each other. And amongst it he said, وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا, and don't turn your backs on each other. كُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, rather be slaves of Allah, worshippers of Allah, brothers. So the Shaykh said that this practice that he saw appearing, he said, I fear that it falls under this saying, do not turn your backs on each other. He said, and some of the people have complained about this to me, saying, these people, they pray at our side by side with us, and then they give their backs to us, they sit with their backs to us. Why do they do that when they have no need? The The Shaykh said, so if that was happening in a lesson, and the person wanted to listen to the one who's speaking, meaning a lesson, it's okay. The people are close, and the next people, of course, they're facing their back. So if it's a lesson, the person wanted to listen to the one who's speaking, no harm. However, or he said, or if he was in a restricted place, I mean sometimes the row is very restricted, very tight. In that case, we would say, get up. In that case, get up. The prayer's finished, it's very tight. Get up and move away from the row. But don't just sit there with your back facing your companions. Go towards the Qibla, or go behind the rows, somewhere where you're not putting your back towards your brother Muslims. He said, the actual knowledge is with Allah. I feel that the person who puts himself in front in this way, he will feel that he is actually having some precedence over the people, and that the rest of the people are less in level than him, and the like of that. So I fear that Satan will play with this person. And I hold that this action enters under the prohibition in the hadith which has preceded. So whoever moves in front of his brothers in the row after the salam, I fear that this will be a case of the hearts differing, because he has put himself forward in front of them. So therefore I advise whoever does that he should leave it. And Allah is the one who grants success. Walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad. Then we'll continue with the hadith of the chapter next time, inshaAllah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله